And here we are. Hey, Scott Conkright here with Meaningful Happiness Podcast. I have Robbie here, who is a good friend of Dustin. Why he's here, I have no idea. I tried to ask him. So
I thought you guys said beers.
Say it again.
I thought you guys said come over for beers. I don't know why I'm here.
No, we can get a beer.
We can get a beer. Yeah, I mean, we're going to smoke a joint pretty soon, too.
Yes. Polypharmacy is the answer. Agreed.
Beer, whiskey shots. You were a psych major.
Yeah.
That qualifies you to be on the show. Okay, that's all we needed.
Good enough, yeah.
And this is Dustin's second invitation here. And as those who have watched previous podcasts know, I am all about affect theory and relationships, and especially how shame affects relationships. So one of the things that I want to do with you guys is to have a conversation about how you might envision emotions and affects and so forth working in relationships, especially with your relationship with yourself. And before the podcast, Robbie, you had mentioned that jokingly that you studied behavioralism and that was what worked for you. And interestingly, I don't have a single patient that comes in, but that's not true. I've had occasions say like there are certain behaviors that he or she didn't like, but they mostly didn't like them because it didn't feel good to have those behaviors. My patients come to see me not because of thinking problems or behaviors in general, but because of how they feel, and they don't feel good. So it's a curious thing in the 250, 300 years of psychotherapy that we've somehow left affects and emotions out of the theorizing. Mm-hmm. So it took me to show up to change things.
Thank you, Scott.
And call me Your Highness.
Okay, I was like, well, you're not the one with the crowd.
I know. What am I doing with this?
By the way, just as an aside, I can barely hear you, Dustin, now.
Okay.
So I just want to make sure the mic
coming in okay. Loud and clear, a little hotter.
A little hot. It needs to be a little hotter.
Okay. Into the microphone directly.
Okay, we're good now.
Yeah. All right.
So going back to affects, one of the things that I'm having to do right now is actually educate people about what affects are, because the word is used almost like emotion. So we have affect regulation, affect deregulation. In my field, we use those terms, but the people in my field use it almost as emotional dysregulation, like they're synonymous.
Okay.
But in fact, affects are the biological basis of emotions. So one of the ways and you guys can help me out, because it's a complex kind of theory in a way until you get it, and then you go, oh yeah, now I get it.
Yeah, let's make this effective. Our talk on affect.
Yeah, right. So I sent a paper to somebody about affect, and he goes, "Do you know you misspelled affect throughout the whole paper?" Oh, like, okay, that tells me that I've got some educating to do. Okay,
yeah.
So here I am.
Funny, yeah.
So one of the things that's always fascinated me, and this is why when I stumbled on affect theory, it was so exciting, is that as a therapist, at some level, you have to ask yourself, why do people do what they do? And we all have that, whether you're with therapists, psychologists or not, generally have that question. If you have any curiosity about yourself and other people, granted, there are a lot of people who have no curiosity about themselves and other people. But if you are one of those people that does try to figure things out, one of the questions is, why do people do what they do? Well, we're kind of wired for a reason, and it's a very fascinating one, for being interested in things, which is one of the affects, is interest, excitement. What Sylvan Tompkins, the father of affect theory, pointed out. Dustin, you're looking so intently. That's really
very interesting,
right? He's spending more time just looking at himself in the camera, I think.
You caught me. That was so distracting there for a second. I couldn't think through that one. But thank you, Dustin.
I try to help. Yeah.
So when you go up the evolutionary chain, the ladder, you you have animals that have more and more affect. Okay, have more feelings. So if you have a pet, this is what happens with humans and pets all the time, especially a dog. Not so much with cats, but with dogs is that we attribute and we project all sorts of feelings onto this poor dog. Okay, because they have these facial expressions or like these looks, they tilt their head, things like that. Now, you can't really do the same thing with an insect, right? Like you're not going to project, oh, I think isn't he so cute? He looks so coy.
Mm-hmm.
Insects don't you can't do that with insects. You can't do that with flies. You can't do, the higher up. What I thought was really curious, and I think about this, whales apparently are pretty smart, right? I mean, they're supposed to have big brains, and they I would imagine they have a lot of affect. I don't know how you find out what affects whales have because we can't talk to
Uh,
them. But maybe they have an incredible sense of humor and are really good with metaphor.
Did you hear the one where he
Until they
went
find a way to communicate.
whistle whistle click? The whistle click was pretty hilarious.
That's right. Once we figure it out, we're gonna go, whoa, have a beer, bro. Like you are so fun.
Yeah.
Anything that moves starts having affect. The more that we move around, plants don't have affects.
Mhm.
Once we started having to move around, we had to make sense of our surrounding about what was safe and what was not safe rapidly. We had to orient ourselves to moving around and so forth. So if you think about it evolutionarily, we're kind of wired in certain ways to be moving around. And then as we got further and further up in terms of needing our brains to grow, I mean, human beings are the only animal that gives birth to a child that can't live on its own, and well, until what, 13 or so.
Most boys, 36, I would say.
Yeah, I was
is
going
kind
to
of
say,
the
like,
age of maturity.
it's getting up there now.
We're getting there, yeah.
I mean, a colt comes out of the mother, and gets up and walks around and can start feeding.
Yeah.
Babies can't do that. And so what do babies do? They show a lot of affect in order to get care.
Mm-hmm.
So affect are the biological bases of emotion, and there's 9 of them, and they orient us to what's important. Okay, so things like interest, excitement orient us to to novel things, to new things. Okay, so if you've seen a baby, it'll look around. Everything's new to a baby, and so it's going to look around to all things that are looking exciting until it craps its pants, and then it's in distress. And you know what a baby does when it's in distress? It wails. And guess who's also distressed now?
Sounds like Dustin's problem.
Indeed, yes. I
Well,
currently have a wet nappy, but I'm struggling through it. It's going to be okay.
So
Mama's going to change me soon.
distress lets people know that something needs to be done. Okay, it's a form of communication. All right. Same with a poopy diaper. You kind of involuntarily will have what Tompkins calls dissmell, or disgust is another affect.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So what Tompkins' point is that if there is no affect to orient us to do something, we're not going to do anything. And without affect, we're not going to have any consciousness of anything. It's only the things that we pay attention to at an emotional level, at an affect level, that enter consciousness. So what do you think of that, guys?
So, Robbie, you and I chatted about this a little bit a couple days ago. I had said, in terms of emotional drives, to what do we get excited about? Why do we get up every morning? And I said, for most people, I think it's all about conversations with other people, relationships, our ability to function within a society. And then you made an interesting counterpoint about people deriving a lot of joy, maybe just from taking a walk in nature. And so maybe it's not all about interacting with other people. If you want to expound on that a little more.
Yeah, I think just my initial point was, it sounded like your initial point was just based purely on interactions with other people. I mean, that was kind of what I was assuming you meant by it. But I mean, some people don't necessarily derive all of their pleasure necessarily from interacting with other people. I think that was really the only point I was trying to make, is that it wasn't necessarily with interactions with other people, but um, some people are perfectly content living out in the woods and deriving all of their happiness from being out in nature, I think.
Right. So yeah, maybe I didn't quite get to the heart of it by saying it's all about interpersonal relationships.
Yeah.
Well, so from an affect theory point of view, there are two positive affects: interest, excitement, and enjoyment, joy. Now, interest and excitement can be anything from curiosity to basically anything that you care about fits under interest. So it can be anything that's novel initially. So here's the curious thing about how affects work. The only creature that shows pure affect is a baby up until about age 2. It shows all the affects: interest, excitement, enjoyment, joy, and they're all on the face, by the way. You can tell by baby's face and its body in certain ways what it's feeling. You know when it's content, you know when it's interested in something, you know when it's distressed, you know when it's angry, and so forth. They're 9 affects, and I'll go through them later on, but babies do pure affect. Starting at age 2.5, the infant starts having a memory, can have a memory that it can remember. Okay, so it starts having a way to recall events, and because it can start doing that, it can start making affect impure. Now you'll probably see with your kid, Dustin, that as it gets older and older, he can have this smirk, meaning he knows he's doing something he shouldn't be doing.
I love that.
Okay?
Yep, I could tell.
Right? So once you know that, you go like, oh, you know he's now having emotions.
Yeah.
So basically, affects are emotions. I'm sorry, affects are memories plus affect and memories make emotion. Okay.
So why did people develop that way? Why not just remain as babies and just be perfectly honest with our emotions all the time? What's the benefit?
Well, you wouldn't be able to learn much of anything and repeat anything. Like
That's true.
We'd be dead if we didn't learn. Like some things are not okay.
Aren't
I mean, like, go ahead.
aren't emotions evolutionarily prudent for quick decision making? Isn't the reason kind of? I mean, that's some theory I think I heard some time ago. Don't emotions allow you to make decisions more quickly? For example, if we're all living, out in, the savannas of, somewhere, and we've got a lion attacking, the group of people. I mean, we're right at that lion because of our affect and our memories of that. So it allows us to make more quick decisions rather than sitting around going, okay, well, let's think about what is the lion, what
As he's gnawing my arm off.
exactly.
Lion, sit down. Let me offer you a beer. Let's have a talk, Lion. No, it's not going to work that way. We're going to be dead pretty quickly. We're going to be dinner for their lion. Let me explain it this way. So the example I give it's something that I'm writing up right now is think of startle and fear, or the lion. But in this case, it's going to be turbulence, like on an airplane. Okay. What I really want to stress is that memory and emotion comes like a millisecond after affect. So you're on a plane. It's your first time on a plane. You're sitting back in the toilet in like row 2000, where all the turbulence is the worst. Okay.
You're on American Airlines, which is the worst airline, so it's pretty scary.
Finger guns for that guy.
I think you need to explain that though, because we're going to think we're just bashing American Airlines. Robbie, what's your connection to?
I work for American Airlines, and
okay. That's where that comes from. So, Robbie, if I'm correct, if you're the pilot and you're not expecting turbulence, you may still be startled or surprised, and you might have a jolt of fear, but like within a millisecond, you go like, "That's turbulence."
Exactly. Yeah, that's
And,
something we discuss is that just overcoming even that startle factor when it comes to any kind of emergency situation. Taking the startle factor is very quick, it's very sudden, and then it can almost be overwhelming for some people. So you have to try and realize that you've encountered that startle factor, and then bring yourself out of it. So we have procedures as well, just for the other. Sometimes it requires the other guy in the cockpit to go, "Hey, we have these call outs that we make to try and bring you out of that startle factor, so they can more logically process the situation."
right. Thank you. That's an affect. You have no control over it. No matter how many times you're going to pilot that plane, and excuse me, and experience turbulence, you're still going to react. And if it's really bad turbulence, I mean, I would imagine that if a big drop in elevation or something like that, you're still going to be afraid momentarily until you get on top of it. I don't know what terminology you guys use for it. Get your shit together or whatever. Now the guy in the back is shat his pants. It's a good thing that he's next to the toilet because he has no idea what's going on, right?
Those little RSEC bags in the back of the seat are for more than what you think.
You put wet wipes there too, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So the affect of fear in that startle is going to be different for you, Robbie, than the guy in the back because you have a memory of lots of different turbulences. Okay, that makes things different for you than somebody who's never experienced turbulence before. Now, the lion tamer, if the lion comes bolting out of nowhere, is going to be startled and frightened as well, but will probably, from memory, know what to do. Versus you or me or anybody else, lion coming at me out of nowhere, not good news. I have no idea what to do with lions. I don't think I can take one on. I think they're fairly large, at least the ones I've seen. So that's the difference. When you're interested in something, all of a sudden something catches your eye, especially if it's a novel thing, a novel, like we see a sparkling something over there, you're going to orient to it. And then emotion's going to come and you go, oh, that's a sparkler. Now, if you're a baby, you've never seen a sparkler yet, you might be even frightened. I've seen babies around sparklers like, ah! They don't think they're so fun. It takes later on where you realize what it is to have them as fun.
Or all those crying
Kind of
Santa
scary.
baby photos, all the babies crying in Santa's lap.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yep.
You learn about Santa later, and then have this associations to Santa and what Christmas is that makes Santa tolerable.
Tolerable.
We have a huge Santa fan here. I can see.
Who wants to sit in a stranger's lap? I've never understood that. Well, Dustin, is it Christmas yet? Can I sit in your lap? So again, we're all going to have the same affects, but we're going to have different emotions about the affects. And so the one that I'm really interested in is shame. So shame by Tompkins' definition is any partial reduction of a positive connection with somebody. The problem is that shame is on a continuum, and for most people, shame is always thought of as embarrassment, humiliation, mortification, on the extreme end. When on the low end, we need another word for it. And I have a friend, my friend Joel came up with one, shamejection. I'm not sure if that's going to work.
Shamejection.
But thinking like, when anytime you're, again, if it's a partial reduction in the positive feelings you're having with somebody, if somebody cancels on you and you're looking forward to it, you're going to do what I call, or you might do what I call the slump of shame, where you're like, oh, bummer, man, dude, you let me down. That you just, or like it's 11 o'clock at night, you need to go to bed, and you told your wife or your friend or whoever that you were going to help finish the IKEA bookcase, and it just won't come together. And you do that slump, all right? It's a partial reduction in the positive or potential positive about finishing the bookcase. So it can be done in relation to an object or a task as well. If you can't complete it and you're frustrated, that frustrated or rejecting, deflating sense at a low level is also shame. Anything that deflates in a relationship to a task or to a person that causes deflation is a form of shame. which is a
So would the
radical idea
reduction
for
of a
most people.
penis pump as it deflates, would that be part of that as well?
Could you
What's
could you
the-
say more, Dustin?
Yeah. So when you deflate a
Is
penis
there a
pump,
reason you're
as
I
asking
think
this
here comes an actual shame. Let's
I'm
go.
just I'm just trying to relate to my own life.
That leads us into the more personal part of this. Yeah, please go for it. I'm getting into
He wasn't.
it now.
He was only ashamed he brought the My Little Pony penis pump.
That's yeah. You know what? That's too much. Yeah, that's extreme. No, that makes sense. Though I would almost I would wonder if micro shaming would be another term that might be interesting there. Just like microaggressions, micro shaming. Just a small.
I think microaggressions are micro shaming.
No, good point. Okay, it's the same kind of concept. Yeah.
Yeah. So keep in mind that it's important to recognize how shame works, and that shame works in that way. For instance, with your son, Dustin, the only way your son experiences love from you is through your interest and enjoyment of him, and enjoyment enjoyed, and an interest and excitement. He wants that from you, and he wants to know that you're getting it from him. That's really the only way that we show connection with other people. So if that's missing in the relationship, it's not a very loving relationship. But any time that you say you're mad or upset with your son, he's going to feel dejected. He's going to deflate. He's going to be upset about it, and he's going to want that connection back. No, it's appropriate. It is totally appropriate for you to shame him in the right amount for a behavior, but not him. And that's a distinction that for parenting I really want to make. Is that your son really needs to know, unlike you, that you can't take your penis out anywhere that you want to, because you can get arrested, which has happened several times with you, right, Dustin?
Well, I had to show people the My Little Pony. It was interesting.
Fortunately, I can joke about that because there are people who haven't learned that. But you want your son to know that, right? And you also want him to know how to behave, to do all sorts of things, to not run out in the street. Those sort of things are critical. That's what shame is for. And we have a motivation psychologically to reconnect to people that we care about. And so we learn to do what we're told because we want to please our parents and others around us. And we want to look good in other people's eyes. So if we do something, are you following the case of the South Carolina, the Murdochs, I think that it is? The dad who...
Oh, is it the judge or something that kind of... that?
The lawyer, yeah.
Our lawyer, yeah.
The son had, apparently was piloting a boat, and the father got him out of that. And a kid got killed because he was drunk, the son was. And then a year later, I think the dad killed the mom and the son. It's just like a weird case. Okay. But if you think about it, I mean, what I was reading was going like, this is just weird. Like people, the whole thing is just wild, like how this all happened. But if you lose your reputation in a community, and this is where this all started, that sort of shaming is a negative sort of shaming, right? Like you now have lost good feelings from a community that you wanted to be connected to. Okay, if you do something bad at work, you screw up, other people see that, there's a sense of humiliation or shame that comes from that. And you'll want to try to make up with your people around that, right?
Yeah.
And get in good standing with them again. And that's a positive. It means like, if you were raised well enough, that bit of shaming will keep you from making that same sort of mistake, or you'll be attentive to it. And so shaming helps model behavior. But what happens with a lot of people is that, especially in relationships, is that they don't realize how the small shaming part, like the rejection, name calling, putting people down, or just stonewalling, all the bad things that people do in relationships can feel like the micro shaming, and like 1,000 paper cuts. And then 3 years down the line in that relationship, there's so much resentment and anger that somebody leaves the relationship, cuts it off, has an affair, bad things start happening in the relationship, without people knowing that those little microaggressions or micro shaming need to be repaired just as much as a big one.
Yeah, it's almost like you could do a math equation. Like 10 little mean things are just as bad as one super mean thing, as far as like negativity towards, I don't know exactly how our brains process that, but it seems like you could probably figure out, okay, over the course of a month, if, 100 happy things happened and 100 sad things happened, it kind of cancels out and you're kind of neutral towards that party.
But don't people tend to hold on to the sad, the bad? They hold on to the bad stuff much longer than they do the happy things, don't they?
Right,
That's a
Robbie.
good point.
That's
Yeah.
it only takes one shaming incident to negate everything that's good. One of the truisms about affect theory is that negative affects always precede or like always trump positive ones. And so in relationships, we really have to work towards fostering, maximizing positive affects, and minimizing negative ones. And so that goes with parenting, that goes with having any sort of relationship. If you are forever bringing negativity into the relationship, you're basically killing it off. You may say like lots of wonderful things about me, for instance, and you say one negative thing, like you said, Robbie, that's the one I'm going to keep.
Mm-hmm.
When I get evaluations, when I do workshops, they're usually very positive, and there's always like one person that says, "But he did this, and I didn't like this," and it's like, can I remove this one? This is the only negative one, and it's the only one I'm going to pay attention to now. I'm going to hunt that person down and make him change his mind.
Yeah,
because that's all that's going to be on my mind.
What a cruel irony of life, but that is a good point that, we can have 10 great interactions and one negative one. And we remember the one negative one.
Well, that's the joke because I'm on the committee for one of the associations I do workshops for. And one of the jokes is that out of all 20 or 30 evaluations, you can always remove one of them. You can just like one gets to be thrown out.
I like that.
Which of course we don't do, but that would be ideal.
Should. Yeah. Remove the outliers.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
For statistical reasons.
Of course. Yeah, not for our own egos.
Not for my feeling of shame. So I'm curious what associations you guys might have. I know I've thrown a lot of stuff out there and probably a little bit all over the place, but I do know that whenever I bring up the word shame, people have an immediate reaction to it. And sometimes it's helpful when I describe from affect theory what it's about, but there's no way to have like a neutral reaction to the word shame. So I'm curious if anything's popped up for you, shame wise or feeling wise or affect wise.
Yesterday, my wife actually, she went in for a procedure, I guess to treat sinusitis. They put this little balloon thing up your nose, which I guess widen the sinus passages so she can breathe a little better, so her sinuses can drain a little bit better, or whatever. Because she used to get sinus infections a whole bunch. But I guess she had a vagovasal syncope, I think is the word. I just found out. I just found out about it yesterday, or the phrase, I guess, where it just causes her blood pressure, like the sight of blood or any kind of, I guess, some sort of undue stress can just cause her blood pressure to drop. And when her blood pressure drops, she just faints. And I'd never actually seen it before with her. She's gotten a little lightheaded, whatever, and sat down and been fine. But yesterday, I guess it was so bad that she actually full on fainted. Like we were still in the doctor's office, thankfully, and had one of the doctors with me. He was on one arm and I was on one arm, trying to carry her back to one of the chairs. And she just went totally white and lips went purple and her pupils dilated. And well, she just collapsed there on the floor. And I kind of started to panic a little bit. Just trying to, Jess, I'd never seen it before, just calling her name, Jess. And I felt, I was on the verge of tears myself. And I felt kind of stupid for it that, like, at work, I've had a few issues randomly come up and, I'm able to calm down and deal with it a little more logically. But this time I was on the verge of panic, and I felt kind of stupid for not being able to think logically. Thank God I was at a doctor's office. I can imagine if that had happened here at home or elsewhere, where I felt kind of embarrassed that I kind of responded in that way rather than be able to, act and behave logically. Like, what if that had happened, like I said, away from a doctor's office, or happens later in life, and I just panic and can't think logically about how to address it well, logically. So, I mean, that was my most recent shame event.
Well, thank you for that. I mean, and that's, by the way, I think it's always courageous to talk about a shame event because we're often taught to be ashamed of our own shame. And I think you kind of reference that indirectly, like what the hell is going on? Like I shouldn't be feeling this, and I wish I weren't feeling this, and that feeling of startled shock that you had, plus it sounds like fear, and then shame around your reaction, like I don't know what to do.
hmm
So it's quite the cluster. I don't think we'll bleep it out. It's quite the clusterfuck, for when those things happen because we get cognitively disoriented when we feel shame,
hmm
which just adds to it. So like so there were three affects going on at the same time, and yes, it was a great thing that she was in a doctor's office. You're not a physician unless it's not something that you know.
Yeah.
So you're not expected to know it, but there's still an evaluation that we make of ourselves when we're feeling helpless in a situation like that with somebody that we care about.
hmm
So it's omnipresent in our lives, but usually not at such a frightening way, which is frightening to see. I've seen that several times where people just faint. When I was taking blood a few years ago, a guy next to me, big burly guy, was taking some blood taken. Next thing you know, he was like on the floor.
Hmm.
And the nurses knew what to do, and I was like, "What?" Like I was almost embarrassed for him. I was feeling shame for him. Like, dude, like it's just blood. There wasn't even any blood squirting out any place. It wasn't a Monty Python scene.
It's only a flesh wound.
Yeah, it's only a flesh wound. Like just a little jab, you baby. It's. I can jokingly say that, but that's people get really frightened around needles and other things, and they often feel shame for it. And so, your wife is okay.
Oh yeah, she's doing just fine.
Okay. Good.
Well, she's Canadian, but she's
There
okay.
is that problem.
Well, that's a whole different issue.
That's right.
Is she French-speaking Canadian? Because
No, she took it.
it's not really French up there, by the way.
Yeah, she left in maybe high school and moved to Florida, and she forgot all that nonsense.
Okay.
That's a close one.
Dustin, where are your thoughts and feelings right now?
Yeah, as far as shame, the biggest source for me is usually when I'm not as good of a father as I could be. It's always a struggle when my son is 3, he's testing boundaries, so he's trying to push me and see if what he can get away with and how he can challenge me. So I'm usually pretty calm and happy with my behavior towards him, but I do get angry with him sometimes. And when I feel like I'm angry with him and it's not fair, and I think about it later and I realize he was behaving a certain way just out of curiosity or, normal 3-year-old stuff, and I was mad that he didn't do exactly what I wanted, I'm definitely ashamed of myself. I like to think that I think about these things beforehand, expect his behavior to not always be ideal, and then approach it calmly, and I'm just not always able to do that. So that's definitely a source of shame for me when I'm I think in some way that I'm creating little micro traumas for my son that he'll never recover from. That's like, oh my God, what am I doing? And that's definitely that's unfortunate.
Parenting is an impossible profession. It's impossible to do perfectly. And likewise, like with my daughter, every time I'd screw up, I'd jokingly say, like, there goes another $225 for another therapy session.
Exactly.
She had lots of money for therapy by the time she was 18.
Yeah, I'm just going to write him a check every time I'm mean to him. Here you go, $200. Okay, yeah. Man, there it goes. Is that your son's college fund? No, it's his therapy fund.
Exactly. Fortunately, she turned out pretty well. But, she was over. Fortunately, it's great. She's back in town and living here. So we get together every week for dinner and talk and all that. I'm reminded of different things that she reminds me of. Mostly my perfect parenting, but occasionally my screw ups. But I don't think she remembers this one. But there was one time that she was biting me all the time. Like, take my fingers and like, I kept, stop doing that. Stop doing that. If she did it again, I picked up her finger and I bit it lightly. Like, and she got the point.
Sweet, sweet vengeance.
Was that the right thing to do? I'm mortified just even sharing it. I bit my kid.
Yeah. I mean, It's the fact that she's missing her pinky digit. That's really the
yeah,
sad. That was a lot. That was too much. Yeah.
But she learned her lesson.
That's
On the couch. Don't mess with Daddy.
What did you learn?
She'll never play the piano, but it's fine otherwise.
Yeah, I look back and go, oh boy, I'm glad she's around. Because there were times that I just thought, where is the off button? I'm just going to put her outside, put her in a cage. It's so hard sometimes. You have a hard day. You're not, especially that you're sick, and everybody in the family's sick, and then the kid is just so distressed and angry, and you're like, I'm sick too. I'm sick too. Relax. You got to calm down and stop acting like a baby.
Yeah.
You little 3-year-old.
Right. How dare you act like a 3-year-old, you 3-year-old.
You can't do it. Robbie, do you have kids?
I do not. No. 2 pugs and
babies.
Yeah, it's two dogs and a cat.
Okay. Well, those are kids in a way.
That's
What do you do when they misbehave? Do you feel bad?
Oh yeah, yelling at them, and all he's doing is looking at me with the eyes and. Why are you so stupid? And then, of course, I'm yelling at a bug-eyed pug,
And because you're like just a jerk, because you're like mistreating them, and they just love you. No matter
exactly.
What.
They don't know. Yeah.
That's why I hate dogs.
They could just.
They're humiliating to be around for people like me.
Why can't I reason with you?
Yeah. They can't take a joke. They don't know irony. Well, this has been good. I mean, I appreciate you sharing around that. I think I'd love to do one on parenting and maybe come to one of your podcasts, Dustin. On
parenting. We'll chat again. That'll be fun. Definitely. Because
I think that's an issue that a lot of parents have is not, when your kid melts down at Target, you're mostly feeling shame or embarrassed. So embarrassment is a form of shame. So like your kid's just on the floor wailing.
Yeah.
And you're mostly like, you're not you're not so much concerned about the kid. You're concerned about what all the parents around you are thinking about you.
Yeah.
Right.
That's always a challenge. I do my best to block all that out and think, okay, what is good for my son right now? And I don't care about what other people are thinking, what's going to be the most important thing for him, which is not always easy to do, but that's always the goal that I go into it with. And that helps me a lot. Little preparation where I go, all right, he's probably going to misbehave. We're going to be at dinner for 2 hours. At some point, he's going to spill something or run to another table or misbehave. And some old judgy lady is going to say, oh my God, he doesn't have any control over his child. What a terrible parent. Do I care? If I think about it beforehand, I really don't. I wouldn't want to talk to that horrible old lady anyways, so I really don't care what she thinks about me.
Yeah, none of her kids talk to her at all.
Right.
Because
she's lovely and I'm being super, but so that definitely helps. But you're right. So often we consider the feelings of 100 people around us who will never meet again and don't matter, and not the feelings of the person who's most important, who's your child. And so that's a constant struggle.
I think a lot of parents struggle around that. I mean,
yeah,
it takes a lot of patience, and it takes a village in some ways. It takes other parents in discussions and finding out that what's normative in kids. I mean, depending on the family that you grew up in, a kid losing his temper or doing something bad in public would be considered not okay at all and would be severely punished for it.
Right.
You come from a family like that, your inclination is to want to do the same thing to your kid, like at an emotional level, mostly out of shame. Boy, the parents in your head, in that person's head, are saying, "You're a horrible parent. I never let you get away with that."
Right. Yeah.
And so they have even more of a struggle to do what you're doing, Dustin, which is to slow down and say, like, this is normal normative behavior.
Robbie, have you ever been on an airplane where there was just a totally insane situation where like a kid just was inconsolable and the people around were like losing it? Like, you've ever had to like, man, I might need to land this plane because these people are like crazy?
No, I haven't had a situation. Well, did have, I was just.
That's the reason you guys locked the door.
Yeah.
That's the real reason. Like,
yeah, that's that's their problem. I don't care.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, nothing that where I've been flying that I can think of. I do remember one time where I was sitting in the back deadheading somewhere, with a previous airline, and we had just taken off out of Orlando. Climbing up out of Orlando, a guy sitting in the back just had a full-on panic attack, stood up, we're maybe climbing through just the first few thousand feet, stood up and is like, no, I need to go back, I need to go back, I need to go back. Just having a full-on anxiety attack in the cabin, and we had to turn around and land back in Orlando because the guy couldn't handle being in the airplane. So,
Wow.
yeah, that was probably, I think that was probably the most severe case I've ever been a part of, at least. I wasn't flying the plane, but I saw the guy having the panic attack. But inconvenience.
So did you do anything to try to console him? Or?
No, the flight attendants took care of that.
Okay.
Yeah, nothing I could really do.
You were incognito.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, have you had it, Dustin? I've had a flight. I had a flight from here in Atlanta to San Diego with a baby right next to me, wailing for 4 hours, 4.5 hours, however long it takes to get there. Which was, I mean, I felt bad for me. I felt bad for the mother. I felt bad for the baby, and everybody around was bad mouthing her. And
I know, and it's not the parents' fault. And then there's the opposite. I was on a flight where it was a pretty old child, probably 10, 11 years old, who was kicking the back of my seat, just like really annoying. And so I turned around and his mom was right next to him. And I said very nicely, hey, buddy, do you mind, don't kick my seat. It's kind of annoying. And his mom lost it on me. She started screaming at me on the airplane. How dare you? Don't talk to my son like that, all that. And I turned back around and I said, you kick my seat all you want, buddy. I could totally see where this is coming from. That was an interesting one.
So you didn't tell them both that you bite, which is what I would have said. I bite.
Get the fangs out.
Give me your fingers right now.
Yeah.
No, that's horrible. Yeah. A kid, no wonder that kid is out of control.
Yeah.
His mom allows him to be out of control.
Bizarre. Yeah.
Well, thanks, guys. This has been really good.
Thanks for having me. This is my first podcast to be a part of.
Oh, is that
yeah,
right? You do it so well. You look like you've been on like dozens of them.
Yeah, you're cool, calm, and collected, man. Killing it.
I'm wearing a T-shirt. So I got.
We're all pretty informal. I'm just the only guy that doesn't have a fan on the show, so like I was not. Like I really want a fan next time. Get rid of that. Get rid of that. You're on my podcast, dude. I need to get a. What is that? A cup holder or something like that?
It's a tumbler. Yeah.
A tumbler. I need one of those with the Meaningful Happiness logo on there.
There you go. Yeah.
Next time.
I like it.
Well, thanks a lot. Really appreciate you guys. Nice meeting you, Robbie.
Yeah, nice to meet you too, Scott.
And I'll get this thing done and send it out to you guys.
Fun. All right.
Appreciate it. You guys take care.
Adios.
Adios.